Overnight, Iran has fired hundreds of missiles and drones toward Israel in retaliation for Israel's previous strikes on Iran's embassy building in Syria, which killed 2 important generals and other people who were present in the Iranian consulate at the time. The initial scope of Iran's action was unclear, but by now it seems that it was a limited attack toward Israel's military installations, especially the ones that might have served as launch pads for the attack against the embassy building. So, does this mean war? Here are my 2 cents on the current situation. I do think that we have some chances that this might not become the all-out war between Israel, the United States, and Iran. There are some encouraging signs that the crisis might finish with this counterattack. First of all, Iran's actions seem so far to have killed no one, which is already a very big relief, as it takes away a major argument from pro-war hawks in the US and in Israel from doing a massive counter-strike. Second, the Israelis are boasting that their air defense took down almost all the projectiles, but it is clear now that at least some of them went through. But the general narrative in media seems to be that Israel was was defending its airspace successfully. If we look, for instance, here at what CNN writes in CNN, it is reported that Israel's military says that 99% of the more than 300 projectiles were intercepted. How true that is, we can only guess. We can't know. It is clear that the Israelis intercepted a good part of it, but that also means that some of the projectiles actually made it through. Scott Ritter in his Twitter feed actually wrote that the Nevatim Air Base, that is home of the F-350 fighters that attacked the consulate in the first place, were hit by several ones of the of Iran's hypersonic missiles, and he claims that not a single Iranian missile was intercepted, and concludes from that Israel is defenseless. Now, whether that's the case or not, I really don't know. As much as I appreciate Scott Ritter's great analysis, sometimes he has he sometimes does overstate certain military affairs by just a little bit. On the other hand, the Israelis now seem to want to project that they successfully defended themselves, which actually then takes away a major argument for a counterstrike that would be deadly on, let's say, an Iranian city or even in a military base. One more thing is that the Americans now seem to want to de-escalate as well. There are reports on Al Jazeera that there was a 25 minutes phone call between Benjamin Netanyahu and Joe Biden, in which the two apparently discussed strategy. And very encouraging is that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says the US does not seek further conflict with Iran, and that Antony Blinken repeated these words. And this is not the usual US rhetoric of we will do anything it takes in order to take out the blah 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 threat and so on and so forth. This to me sounds very much de-escalatory, as if the US is signaling that as long as there is nothing more coming from Iran, that they wouldn't take it further. And Israel by now has reopened its airspace, has said that these flights this morning from Tel Aviv, they will depart, although civilian air travel might be affected, of course, by what happened, but the airspace is not closed. And also Jordan and Iraq have reopened their airspace. So the cues we are getting at the moment seem to point toward that this might be an end for now of the massive violent actions between Iran and Israel. There is one more. There's one one more thing, that the Iranians actually also are saying that as long as there's no other strike now, they will deem this affair to be done. In Russia Today, we read that the Islamic Republic is saying by itself that it has the right to respond to the attack on its soil in Syria, but the embassy buildings are considered Iranian soil and property. That was already an act of war, and that under the UN Charter Article 51, the right to defend yourself, Iran has the right to respond. So they are framing this clearly as a not only a retaliation, but a self-defense act, which makes absolute sense. Of course, the Israelis are now saying this is an attack on their sovereignty and so on and so forth, because of course Israel doesn't recognize anyone else's rights. Israel only recognizes Israel's rights, and when it comes to international law, I posted another video on that one. We know that Israel disregards all and any kind of international law, especially that it's absolutely illegal to attack an embassy under all and any circumstances. Even war doesn't justify attacking embassy premises. But that one aside, the Iranians are saying they're defending themselves, and that Israeli aggression against our diplomatic premises in Damascus have been now answered, and that they consider this to be the end. I forgot apparently to highlight this in here, but somewhere in this article it says that Iran's forces are considering this to be done, or maybe it was in the other article, maybe it was in the Guardian article, where it says that the Iranian forces have been saying that they consider the affair to be over with their retaliatory strikes. The Israelis said that they demand a Security Council meeting, and the Security Council will meet apparently at 4 p.m. Local New York time today on Sunday in the US, and then there will be a discussion in the Security Council, and apparently the Israelis, they demand two things from the Security Council meeting. One, that the Security Council condemns the attacks that were done on Israel, and secondly, that they designate the Iran's military force, the Revolutionary Guards, as a terrorist organization. If they do both of that, or if the US crafts a corresponding resolution in the UN Security Council, it is absolutely clear that Russia and China will veto those. I cannot imagine that either of these two will actually agree to having the official military force of one of their BRICS members be designated as a terrorist organization, which would then allow for a whole different level of ostracizing Iran. I can imagine that maybe Russia and China might let a resolution go through that condemns the attack, because it was a military attack. The hypocrisy is, of course, that the United States and all the European states did not condemn Israel for attacking an Iranian embassy in Syria, and now the condemnation is sought for this retaliatory strike. But if this conflict now moves into the diplomatic level and into the public sphere level and so on, and moves away from military targets, then I am hopeful that we can avert an even larger crisis. This morning when I woke up here in Japan and I saw these projectiles still flying, I was very much scared that this could be the end, but especially the fact that Iran seems to have chosen its targets very carefully, and apparently was also testing how far the missile defense of Israel can go. That seems to suggest that they didn't intend to escalate beyond anything that could provoke Israel into and the United States, especially the United States, into a direct attack. Although we, of course, never know, and this is the danger of this game, we never know if not one of the sides might take something as a pretext in order to escalate even more. But it seems very clear that the Americans are not interested in that. The US is not interested in a war with Iran right now. At least the people right now, or John Bolton, of course, already said that he wants massive retaliation, and people in Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet said that they want massive retaliation. But without the consent of the Biden administration, that might not happen, because Israel depends very much for conventional warfare on the United States, and it seems also that the Americans that the Israelis agreed to talk all next actions through with them. So it seems to be the case that right now we could still de-escalate this, and the forces that want all-out war seem to be those that might not necessarily have the means to do that. Yes, Israel has its bomb, and yes, Israel, several politicians in Israel have been calling for attacking Iran's nuclear sites, but Iran has also made it clear that it will counterattack, and it does have its sights on the nuclear facility that Israel has, and it could blow up the reactor, the heavy water reactor, which Israel officially says is for research purposes, but everybody knows this is where Israel makes its heavy water, and where the components for the nuclear weapons that Israel has are being produced. And that thing seems to be not that defendable. And now that we have seen that Iranian missiles can go through the Iron Dome, and even if 99% of the missiles were intercepted, that would still mean that several missiles can make it through. And if they can make it through, and they can hit this reactor that Israel is using at the moment, well, then that is a real and serious threat for Israel, and one that should hopefully lead to people wanting to rather de-escalate than making it worse. On the other hand, we've also seen more attacks overnight on Gaza, which does mean to me that Israel is not in panic mode. Israel is still very much in normal operations, even militarily, not trying to redeploy most of its forces in order to combat another threat. And overall, the current situation reminds me very much of what we have seen in early 2019, I think it was, in January 2019, when Donald Trump gave the order to assassinate the Iranian general, Mr. Soleimani, when he was in Baghdad. And then in retaliation to that strike, the Iranians fired missiles at US air bases in the region, but they made sure that they didn't kill anyone, that they hit ground, but not troops. And it seems to me so far that this was a larger version of this retaliatory strike, that now Iran has shown that it can cause damage if it chooses to do so, and it can tell towards its own population that Iran is not just sitting by and letting the infringements of its sovereignty pass by. And it also got to test Israel's Iron Dome, and that it says, like, we leave it at that. This is a restrained response, from as far as I can judge this with the reports that we have for now. And at least for now, it seems the US is not willing to go further, and whether Israel will listen to that, or whether Israel will do another horribly escalatory strike or not, is of course another question. For now, I'm hopeful that we don't go to another war in West Asia and, spiral into into Third World War here, little by little, just by virtue of adding more wars. Maybe one more thing that is worth mentioning is that Iran warned that if other countries open their airspace to US and Israel's forces, that they would answer accordingly. So Iran is threatening Jordan, and Iran is threatening also Iraq, that if their airspaces should be used for attacks against Iran, that Iran would also take countermeasures against them. And we've seen over the last couple of days that the Middle East kingdoms, Bahrain and Qatar and the UAE in general have said to the United States that they do not wish that military bases, U.S. military bases, are being on their soil should be used for attacks against Iran. So it seems that in the Middle East, in West Asia, currently a lot of states are understanding that this is extremely dangerous, and even Saudi Arabia didn't, so as far as I've seen until now, didn't outright condemn the attacks, but called on everybody to de-escalate. I expect that Russia and China are doing the same. China did the same. China said everybody should de-escalate and should calm down. So the community around this area right now seems to push very hard toward avoiding a widening of the conflict. And the Hezbollah attacks that we have seen in previous days, they took place before this major event and not during. So there seems to be no coordinated attack from Hezbollah and Iran in order to seriously attack Israel. So it seems that this was a warning. And let's hope that we can avert war an even bigger war in the Middle East, and maybe go back to the negotiating table.